Hey guys, it's Dr. Justin Marcagiani here. We're going to be doing a live chat here today on the top 5 thyroid nutrients to help improve and enhance thyroid function. I'm really excited to dive in. Before we do, smash that like button. Really helps the YouTube algorithm. Make sure you hit the subscribe and the bell so you get notifications of great content. Also, let me know about your own thyroid health. What's really helped move the needle with you? All right, let's dive in. Top 5 thyroid nutrients. So number 1 is going to be selenium. Selenium is a deiodinase kind of based compound, meaning the mineral is really important with the liver, and the deiodinase enzyme, which helps cleave off iodine from T4 to T3 and helps activate your T4, which is more inactive, to T3, which is more active. So this deiodinase, meaning it pulls off an iodine. So you have T, which is tyrosine, and then you have 4 molecules of iodine like so, and this deiodinase enzyme comes in, pulls off 1 molecule of iodine, which takes T4 to T3, which is about 300 to 500% more metabolically active than T4. So that really helps enhance thyroid activation. So selenium is important, about 200 micrograms a day on the minimum side. Zinc is really important. We also know in the news, zinc is really important for viral health and immune health. It's also helpful for stomach acid, and it's also helpful. It's really needed to make stomach acid. It helps with the gut lining, helps with the immune system. It helps with your genetics. There's something called zinc fingers, which helps with the epigenetics, and we need zinc to activate it. Zinc's also very helpful for thyroid hormone function and thyroid conversion as well. The next one would be magnesium. Magnesium, it's a relaxing kind of vasodilator mineral. It has over 1,000 enzymatic roles in the body. And according to CDC and a lot of different places, 50% of the population or so is deficient in magnesium. So there's hundreds, if not thousands, of enzymatic roles in the body. Number 2, when you consume a lot of sugar and a lot of carbohydrate, you actually burn up a lot of magnesium because magnesium is needed for the Krebs cycle to produce energy. And the more sugar and carbohydrates that you eat and inflammatory foods, you're going to burn through magnesium. So your demands of magnesium will go up with stress and more processed sugar and refined carbohydrate and grains. Number 4 mineral, I would say, would be iodine. Now, iodine's a double-edged sword. Obviously, it's an important building block to make the thyroid hormone. You don't need a lot of it, though. So a lot of people may come out and overdo the iodine, which could actually increase autoimmunity because it can increase thyroid antibody production. Because when you have this deiodination process that happens, hydrogen peroxide gets spit off, and that can easily create inflammation and cause B lymphocytes to kind of infiltrate the thyroid and really drive inflammation and increase an autoimmune attack. So iodine, if it really truly is deficient, you'll start to see a goiter. You'll start to see some swelling of that thyroid, like in the goiter belt kind of area, Midwest, New York, Michigan, that area, a lot of deficient iodine in the soils. But there's a happy medium. If you go too high, there's data showing that you can increase Hashimoto's and autoimmune attacks. So you have high iodine on one side can create the Wolff-Chaikoff effect, which can shut down that sodium iodine symporter that brings iodine into the cell. And if you go on the low side, you can have the Jod-Basedow effect. So you have both of these different seesaws happening, and I talk about that in my new book coming out soon called The Thyroid Reset. So look for that coming out soon. And I would say the next nutrient would be vitamin A. Vitamin A is very important for the cellular receptor sites, very important for the immune function, very important for thyroid hormone conversion. So I'd say vitamin A. It also really helps the cell membrane really work well, really work healthy, helps with oxidative stress. So vitamin A, zinc, selenium, magnesium, and iodine are my top 5 thyroid nutrients. Now, there's other mitigating factors too that we can talk about that involve cortisol and high levels of insulin or high levels of mercury. Both of these things can either affect thyroid conversion, right? Cortisol is too high. That can block T4 to T3 conversion. It can also affect the HPA-TG axis. It can affect the brain talking to the thyroid and the thyroid talking, to the rest of the, converting to the rest of the body. So high levels of cortisol can affect TSH and affect the hypothalamus pituitary feedback loop. High levels of insulin can affect things, right? Insulin resistance can decrease thyroid conversion. Low insulin from low-calorie diets can also affect it too. We talked about low cortisol. Chronically low cortisol from chronic stress is obviously a deal breaker as well. We need healthy levels of cortisol so we can get that thyroid hormone to get into the cell. So it's very for adequate levels of cortisol. People just focus on the high side of cortisol, which that can disrupt the feedback loops of the HPA axis, and it can also increase blood glucose because part of that stress response is mobilizing glucose because normally we'd use that glucose to run, fight, or flee. Now we're just stressed sitting at our desk. That glucose gets dumped into our body. It creates an insulin surge, and you're driving insulin resistance just sitting at your desk burnt up. So cortisol, insulin, and then we can always address the heavy metal component, which can always stimulate an autoimmune response. Most thyroid issues, 50 to 90%, depending on what you see, are going to be increased through an autoimmune response. So the more things you can do to be healthy and keep your immune response under control is really going to help improve your health. All right, let me dive into some questions, y'all, and see what you think. And if you're enjoying the video, let me know. Put it in the comments below, and make sure you share it to friends and family. All right, Pink writes in, my TSH is at 4.5. Notice my blood pressure and heart rate are very low, like 63 and 86 over 58. Wow, for the blood pressure. So that automatically tells me there's an adrenal and a thyroid issue. So we know there's an adrenal issue because when your blood pressure goes below 100 over 80, that tells me that your mineral corticoid, specifically aldosterone, which is made in the outer cortex of the adrenals, is weak. So we can add in high quality minerals and sea salt and magnesium and potassium. We got to get you on an adrenal program. And of course, your TSH, once it goes above 2.5 to 3, according to the American Clinical Association of Endocrinologists, there's starting to become some disruption in that feedback loop from the brain to the thyroid. So definitely some mitigating factors there. Nikki writes in, starting having calf cramps when going to bed and when waking up. Tried adding in electrolytes, but seemed to get worse when I do that. Do I need to worry about thrombosis situation? So it just depends. If you're having cramps, I always want to know what the frequency of it is. When did it all start? What was going on? Any diet changes? But of course, the first thing I go to with cramps is make sure we're getting enough sodium chloride, right? High quality Redmond's real salt usually solves that. The second mitigating factor is going to be potassium. Third is magnesium. So I lean on all those. Potassium is a game changer. Most people don't get enough of it. You need about 4,700 milligrams a day. What does that look like? 6 servings of green vegetables, 1 full avocado, and maybe 1 serving of starch like a squash or sweet potato. Most people are not going to get enough a day. So you can add in some potassium citrate. That's really helpful. You can drink good water that doesn't have trace amounts like Pellegrino, those kind of things. Topo Chico, those are great. And just lean into the electrolytes first and see how much that moves the needle. If you have to dive in deeper with hormone issues, you can reach out to myself and we can do some deeper testing on the hormone and adrenal side and see if that's part of the equation. But we always start with Occam's razor, right? What's the most probable thing that is going on here, right? It's like if you have a headache, you don't jump to, hey, maybe I have a brain tumor. You jump to maybe blood sugar, maybe poor sleep, maybe a cortisol thing, maybe not enough magnesium, right? You jump to the low-hanging fruit first. Are there certain foods or lifestyle things that can negatively impact T4 to T3 conversion? Well, if you're eating tons and tons of cruciferous, especially a lot of raw cruciferous, that is a goitrogen and that can block iodine uptake. And if you're blocking iodine uptake, then you may not have enough iodine to get in and create that T4 molecule. So it's possible if you're doing lots and lots of raw cruciferous, it's possible. Now, just by steaming it, sauteing it, cooking it, you break down a lot of those goitrogens and it becomes a lot easier. So the first thing is I would say don't just not have those foods. I think the nutritional value in those foods is worth it. I just think you have to cook it, steam it, saute it, and see how that goes first. With Hashimoto's, are there times when the thyroid is overactive or is it always underactive with Hashimoto's? Well, that's a great question. So if you have a Hashimoto's flare, if your immune system pops up for some reason, maybe a stressor, maybe some gluten, maybe a big bolus of iodine, right? Maybe some poor sleep, your antibodies could acutely go up and that could attack the thyroid, right? And that thyroid could spill out some thyroid hormone. So you could feel flashes of overactive thyroid and then underactive thyroid. Again, with Hashimoto's, it always ends in low thyroid, but in the beginning and early stages, you can feel like you're having overactive thyroid. And of course, with Graves is a little bit different. We're affecting the receptor sites on the outside of the thyroid, and we're stimulating them to make more hormone. With the thyroid, we're more bursting open those follicles and thyroid hormones coming out. So there's not a synthesis stimulation with Hashi's, but there's a synthesis stimulation with the autoimmune attack on Graves. So a little bit different. Graves will drive high, Hashis will drive low, and eventually you drive low because you only can whip a tired horse for so long. Most people don't get that far with Graves because their palpitations are so bad. Their doctor puts them on PTU or methimazole, or they just give them radioactive iodine and ablate the thing, or they cut it out. Great questions. Dennis writes in, why does caffeine have no effect on me? I drink 3 shots of espresso. I don't have any energy boost. So there's a CYP SNP that has to do with caffeine metabolism. People that have that genetic SNP tend to not process caffeine well. Some people, they have really good genetics when it comes to caffeine metabolism, though you can just thank your genes when it comes to that. All right, excellent questions. The big thing with thyroid issues, we talked about the 5 nutrients. A lot of those nutrients have a positive effect on your immune system. Things like gluten and chronic infections like H. pylori and Yersinia and blasto, they can modulate and affect your immune system in a not so good way and stimulate one side of the immune system that could be attacking that thyroid. So with Hashimoto's, we normally see a Th1 immune response, and that immune response is coming in and attacking that thyroid. So getting rid of it, certain infections can help modulate that immune system. So can vitamin D, and so can glutathione as well. If a serious cough fits for a friend seems to get better with the use of Nexium, what do you suggest to help with the situation to get rid of it? So, I mean, it could be, if there's no like overt GERD, there could be laryngopharynx reflex, which is a silent reflex. It could be that. Either way, there's probably not adequate digestion happening in the upper digestive tract and the stomach. So I would lean into digestive support, and I would lean into looking for bacterial overgrowth, SIBO, and or H. pylori. So of course, get the diet cleared out, work on digestive support. So follow my 6 R's. The first 2 R's are probably the most pertinent. Remove the bad foods, replace the enzymes and acids. Now, next step would be looking at repairing the hormones in the gut lining. The 4th R is removing the infection. 5th R, repopulation, reinoculation of good bacteria. 6 R is going to be retesting. Very important. But I'd first lean into the food and the digestive support, and then do testing down the road, or ideally sooner rather than later. Dr. J, does any natural treatment for pyloric stenosis exist? So when you say pyloric stenosis, are you talking about the sphincter, the pyloric sphincter between the stomach and the small intestine? Is that what you're talking about? Anytime you see stenosis, there's almost always inflammation that's driving stenosis. And a lot of times there's autoimmune inflammation. So of course you have inflammation from food and from refined carbohydrate and from food allergens, but then a lot of times there's some level of gut permeability, which then drives more immune issues because undigested food and bacteria and crap are getting into the bloodstream, and that creates more immune attack, and you see more autoimmunity. So there's like primary biliary sclerosis that can happen, which is autoimmune as well, where the bile ducts get sclerotic and stiff and hard and narrow. So look at the autoimmune components, and everything I do automatically assumes that everyone has an autoimmune condition, because no one's not going to get better because we're addressing them for an autoimmune problem when they don't have it. So it's kind of like do no harm, right? So if I address everyone with an autoimmune issue like they have an autoimmune issue, no one's going to get hurt by it. Most are going to have it, and it's going to be a silent autoimmune issue. And so that's going to be the first thing to work on. Hey, Nikki, thanks so much. You're very welcome. You're welcome, Barbara. Thanks so much. All right, guys, any last questions? If not, we'll wrap up for today. Any questions on Facebook, feel free to let me know, y'all. Hope you guys enjoyed today's chat. If you have any feedback on what's helped you with your thyroid and with some of your adrenal or health issues, put it in the comments below. A lot of listeners get really good guidance from what's worked with other patients. Part of how I've become such a good practitioner is through learning from my patients. When you get to the plate and you get to swing the bat a couple thousand times, you're gonna connect, you're gonna learn, you're gonna get better over time. And so you have a basic understanding of physiology and hormones and biochem, and then you just learn and you apply it. Because really, nutrition and functional medicine is applied nutrition, applied biochemistry, applied physiology. We're applying it all. And I think someone said one time, how's a mechanic and a doctor different? Well, the doctor is working on the car while the car is running, so to speak. If the patient's the car, the doctor is working on the car while it's running. So that's the difference. And so we're applying things, we're seeing what happens and how the person responds. All right, guys, phenomenal chatting with you. You guys have an awesome day. Enjoy, thumbs up, share, and if you want to reach out to myself, links down below to schedule. Take care, guys. Bye.